You're listening to Sciencing the Shit Out of MS, part of the Classroom Psychology Network. And now, here's your host, Dr. Cora Sargent.
Hello everybody and welcome to Sciencing the Shit Out of MS. I'm your host, Cora. Thanks so very much for joining me. I got myself a coffee. It's a Wednesday morning and I am super thrilled to be here to talk to all you wonderful people about some positive psychology, maybe. Talking about multiple sclerosis and kicking its ass all up and down these halls. It's wonderful to see you. And as always, we have our little plan of things that we're going to do to try to, sow the seeds in the garden of our mental health and try to watch them grow. And I think we're getting pretty good now. What is this, episode 11? Something like that? We've got so many seeds to plant, I don't even know where I'm going to put them all. But I'm trying here. So what I've tried to do, instead of just listing them off, I'm trying to create some themes under which we have been doing some stuff. And I've got 4 different themes. The first is, without any other bits, just acceptance, right? I have learned through this podcast, with all of you wonderful folks out there, acceptance has been the most important thing for me. I've realized, recently I've been going to my neurologist and they've been monitoring my lymphocyte count after taking Mavenclad a couple of years ago. For those who don't know, Mavenclad's a replenishment therapy where it shafts your immune system, particularly your lymphocytes, which are, responsible for being a problem in multiple sclerosis. And then it lets them regenerate. And for one reason or another, mine just haven't really regenerated. They remain pretty low. Not dangerously low, but lower than we'd like. And too low to start another disease-modifying therapy. So the neuros are basically like, well, our hope is that this long-term low lymphocyte count is protective in nature. We hope that it'll reduce the risk and severity of relapses longer term, which is no bad thing. But they were like, there's no real concrete evidence for that. And, there's obviously some risks to having low lymphocyte count. But this is our hope, was their words. And I love them so very dearly, my team. I have the best freaking MS team. They are just wonderful. In all my time with MS and even just as a trans person in the world, I've realized how important nursing is as a profession. The nursing strikes that are going on right now, I deeply appreciate what they're trying to do, and I'm glad that they're doing it. And I, fully support the nurses. I once met a nurse who said, we're the only people who can prescribe care. And I was like, this is exactly what they do. And in those darker moments where I'm like really worried about my lymphocyte count, or I'm really nervous about the future, or worried that I just can't get on another DMT, it's them that just kind of talk me down and look after me and make sure I'm okay. I appreciate them deeply. But I've realized that, the multiple sclerosis, the situation that we're in, but this applies to probably most life circumstances, I would say. I mean, the idea that we have any real control over those circumstances is a bit of an illusion. And maybe a bit of a privilege as well. If we actually do have any real control, then it's probably a bit of an unearned privilege. And for sure, I don't really have any control of the MS. I don't really have any control of the future. I don't really have any control of what's coming or what's going to happen. And for a long time, I was battling against that, trying to sort of take control. And I once talked to my counselor and said, it feels like I feel like I'm in a vehicle sliding down a hill. Not a vehicle, let's say a cardboard box. I'm in a cardboard box sliding down a hill, trying not to hit anything, and I've built for myself a steering wheel that's not connected to anything, just so I feel like I'm more in control, because feeling out of control is terrifying. And yet, actually, maybe what I've been doing for all of that time was a problem. And what I needed to do was accept the lack of control. Accept the situation for what it is and realize that, I don't really have any control over any of that stuff. And to let go of the steering wheel, right? It's not really connected to anything, so it was a bit of an illusion anyway. But, let go of the steering wheel and just accept what's coming. there's a real peace in that, I think. And probably the most important lesson I've learned in this podcast is to accept, because, fighting against this stuff is a bit like trying to fight gravity by jumping. For a second or two, you feel like you might be going somewhere, and then for sure you come crashing back down to earth. So acceptance is where it's at. The second is activation towards meaning and social relationships. So the doing in the world. I want to do the things that bring my life meaning, like you and this podcast, and towards social relationships, right? So, the research that I do and the supervision that I provide for trainees, really important to me. And the social relationships that I really want to be fostering more and more and spending time with and telling people that I freaking love them instead of not doing that. For sure, I'm going to keep doing those things. Activation towards meaning and social relationships. The third then is biasing cognition. Like, we are implicitly, intuitively driven towards biasing cognition negatively, like towards the negative things that happen, or towards the future, or towards the past and have regrets, or towards the future and have worries. I want to bias my cognition toward the moment. Stay in the present moment. Breathe. Stay right here. And then be grateful and be kind. Those things are really important. And this is all kind of evidence-based stuff, right? We've covered this over the last 10 weeks. For sure. Biasing cognition toward the moment, grateful and kind. And then 4, problem solve and plan. Because we can do some things about the disease, right? We have to accept that the disease is what it is. And while I'm trying to fight the disease directly, like, I'm struggling to walk more than 12 or 13 minutes at a go right now because I start to get wobbly on my feet. And where I wasn't accepting the situation, I wasn't problem solving. I was just walking for 15 minutes and then collapsing in a heap and like dragging my ass up a hill just to get home. Like, that's no way to live, right? That's dangerous. It's not a good idea. I don't know if I told you this, but, Kaz and I, we went to Croyd a couple of weeks ago. And we went to the beach and it was a 15-minute walk away. And I was like, we'll take the cane. It'll be fine, knowing that I was probably not going to be fine after about 12 to 13 minutes. And I dragged my ass there for 12 minutes. And then the last few minutes, it's only a few hundred feet away. You could see the beach from where we were. And I just couldn't get there. I couldn't get my legs to move. And so Kaz, basically Samwise Gamgee'd me for the rest of the last few hundred feet. She couldn't carry it for me, but for sure she was going to try to carry me, dragging my, 5'11" ass up the last 300 feet to get to the beach. Me floods of tears, never seen a sadder person to go to the beach. But we got there and we put up the seats and we sat down and we watched the waves come in, and it was beautiful. We had a really good time. Didn't even listen to our audiobooks, just spending time together. It was lovely. For sure, and what we could have done, right? What I could have done if I were being sensible is to problem solve and plan. Now, next time, we're going to talk about complex problem solving, I think, because that's something that educational psychologists, of which I am one, it's what we do for a living, is complex problem solving, trying to solve the problems that limit children and young people's access to school. Right? One reason or another, children and young people with disabilities or special educational needs find it hard to belong in school or find it hard to learn in school using kind of common pedagogical approaches. And so our job becomes to complex problem solve, to understand what the problem is, what the barrier is, and to lift it so that people can be fully included in school. So I think there's a role for us doing complex problem solving with multiple sclerosis. And I think we could learn to do that here. So next time we will talk about complex problem solving, but also planning. We talked last time about implementation, intention, interventions, where we look to the things that we want to do in life, the things that we think are important, and we plan how we are going to do those things. And when we run into barriers, we plan how we are going to overcome them. So for me, I've bought myself a pair of crutches, some badass blue ass crutches. Like, these things are real nice. I bought myself a pair of crutches, never done it before. And I bought myself a sword case, y'all, because I don't know why. The reason why is because this sword case has two big, long, like 6 foot, not quite 6 foot, maybe 5 foot, 4.5 foot slots. And I can put my cane in one, I can put my crutches in the other one, sling this thing over my shoulder, and then when I start to get shaky after 12 minutes, I can use my crutches. And if I get good at them and I get strong at them, then next time I can get to the beach in a 15-minute walk. No problem. The reason I didn't is because I wasn't accepting the situation for how it was, and I wasn't problem solving. I was just butting my head up against the brick wall that is this disease. And we can do better. So that's my plan. Implementation intention, I'm going to do exactly that for my walking, for whenever I experience pain, for fatigue. I'm going to plan what I'm going to do in those circumstances to try to improve things. Next time, we'll talk about the complex problem solving, like experimenting, hypothesis testing, and trying to understand exactly what is the problem. Why is the walking a problem and how do I overcome it? Is crutches a good idea? I don't know. The sort of lesson from complex problem solving, the sort of rule of thumb is if we understand a problem well enough, the solution to that problem should present itself. Inclusive solutions, y'all. We'll do it next time. See if we can't apply it to my walking. Who knows? But today, we're getting through like all of the really good, like sound, bedrock, foundational, positive psychology stuff. We're kind of getting to the end of those, I think. We've covered so many of them, and I think we're getting towards the sort of more nuanced and niche stuff, which I think is really cool. Today, we're going to talk about creative writing as an intervention, because I want to get into writing. I wrote something for the MS Trust recently, and they very kindly published it, and I was like, wow, this is making me feel really good. Let's see what the research has to say about creative writing. We're going to recruit self-determination theory in talking about creative writing. So self-determination theory is a theory of sort of motivation and flourishing. It says that in 3 conditions, people will flourish. I use this. It's one of the most common theories that I use when I'm talking about children and young people, particularly about motivation, right? So if I see a child or young person is unmotivated in school, I tend to reach to self-determination theory to see if I can't understand why. Self-determination theory, then, it describes 3 different conditions. The first is autonomy. So autonomy basically is about having freedom of choice. Autonomy from self-determination theory, Dici and Ryan, autonomy is important, foundationally important. We need to make sure that we have autonomy, choice, freedom in choosing how and when and why and what we do, right? And that, I think, is a risk with MS, that our autonomy gets impeded. The more disabled we become, like, I don't know if you've ever been in a wheelchair, but there's this classic thing that people will do where they will grab your wheelchair and move it for you without your consent. That is a full stripping of your autonomy. And that's the reason it's a bad thing to do. So, autonomy is a really important thing. So we need to make sure that we advocate for ourselves to ensure that we maintain a autonomy, essentially, as we maintain choice over how and what and when and, how we do things. I said how twice, but, it's important. The second is competence. So essentially, autonomy isn't enough to motivate people, but we need to feel like we are capable of doing the thing that we're trying to do, right? So what we are doing, we want to feel like we're growing, want to feel like we're developing, want to feel like we're getting better at the thing we're trying to do, feeling a sense of competence. Now, autonomy plus competence, both of those things get impeded with MS, right? Like, I couldn't walk, completely undermines my sense of competence. I can't walk and I can't get to the freaking beach for the last 2 minutes. It completely undermines my autonomy. So both of those things are going to impede my motivation. They're also going to impede my flourishing. So we need to make sure that we keep those 2 things in mind. Need to feel competent, need to maintain autonomy. The third is relatedness. Again, it's not going to be a surprise to anybody at this point if you've been listening over our last 10, 11 weeks. Relatedness, connection to other people. So we need to do things that give us a sense of competence, that maintain our autonomy, and that give us a sense of connection to other people, meaningful connection. Now, this is important because when we talk about the creative writing interventions that are going on, there's actually quite a few of them. When we talk about them, what makes them good seems to be where they recruit all three things, right? Autonomy, relatedness, and competence. And where they lack one, like, in doing creative writing at home on your own, that will give you a sense of autonomy for sure. And if you are like maybe presenting it somewhere or publishing it somewhere, that might give you a sense of competence, or even showing family and friends might give you a sense of competence. But does it give you a sense of relatedness if you're doing it on your own? Maybe a little bit if you have, opportunity to share it with family and friends. But, that this is the problem, right? Like, if you're writing on your own, maybe it might keep you a bit, it might invite you to be a bit less connected to the world than otherwise may be the case. And these groups, creative writing groups that are going on, seem to be where the really good kind of outcomes lie. So last year, Davini and Lawson, great article in Counseling and Psychotherapy Research, Writing Your Way to Wellbeing, an IPA analysis. IPA is interpretative phenomenological analysis. It tends to be a very contextualized, deep analysis of multiple perspectives of the same experience, right? So let's say if you're going to do an IPA of a writing group, you'd make sure to interview the person running it, lots of members of the group, and maybe attend a group yourself. And then the phenomenon of the group, or the phenomenon of writing and sharing your story in the group, is something that becomes the heart of your research there. So an IPA, interpretative phenomenological analysis. I do not know why there are so many tongue twisters in psychology. An IPA analysis of the therapeutic effects of creative writing on mental health and the processing of emotional difficulties. It's really cool. Basically, Davini and Lawson, Davini also wrote in 2020 about the same topic. They basically draw a line between creative writing and sort of therapeutic writing or cathartic expression. Basically, they say that there's something unique about creative writing and uniquely beneficial. Creative writing is about moving from autobiographical narrative solely in the domain of fact to fiction, right? It's about fiction writing, basically. It's about kind of moving from a direct autobiographical, factual account of something to some richer, sort of very fictional consideration, even though, right, this isn't about it being untrue, although it is literally untrue. What Hudson says is that, sure, creative writing is made up, fiction is made up, but this is also the most truthful thing I have to give you. So it's about plumbing the deeper truth of creative writing, right? Plumbing a deeper truth through fiction. Now, they say that while creative writing still deals with truth, it's truth in a more philosophical rather than literal sense. It's not so much an examination of human events as an examination of what it means to be human through fantastic events, which I think is interesting, right? So they say writing about feelings is usually a self-contained session, but creative writing is a process involving the discipline of structuring words, the tenacity of redrafting them for an audience, the pride in a finished product, and the catharsis of fantasy. I do love good writing. Gotta say, Davini and Lawson, when you bring creative writing or that kind of literary, beautiful kind of literary prose to the process of writing a scientific article, it just gives me goosebumps. I love it so much. So Davini and Lawson then saying it might be very valuable to move from factual writing about feelings to writing fiction, right? Drafting that for an audience, creating finished products, and experiencing the catharsis of fantasy. Really, really interesting. Now, another really fascinating article I read recently is by Stickley and colleagues in 2019. Now, these guys, this is a fantastic article, really interesting, from Arts and Health, an international journal for research. They say, right here, sanctuary is what it's called. Right here, comma, sanctuary, as in WR. Right here, sanctuary. Beautiful. Creative writing for refugees and people seeking asylum. So they went to 3 cities in the UK and they created these writing programs that took place across 36 sessions, 3 cities in the UK with asylum seekers. 144 people attended these at least once, and participants could attend as many or as few sessions as they wished. Autonomy, everyone. The mean attendance was 12 across all sessions, so attending 12, which is quite a lot, ranging from a mean of 7 in Nottingham to 17 in Leicester. Fantastic, right? What a beautiful idea. Creative writing, and again, right, creative writing groups. So autonomy, competence, because you're doing it in a group and publicly sharing what you're doing and people like reinforcing each other's awesomeness, and relatedness. You have a connection to a community. We're going to come back to how important the community is in a bit, because the later work really does highlight that. But there's this beautiful, I think it's beautiful, right? So they basically ended the program. So after you come to these sessions, when the program comes to an end in the writing group that you're working with, there's a public performance of some kind of your work, either within the class or at a public event. So this acted as a celebration of the work, an opportunity to share with the community, and a way for participants to confirm to themselves just how much progress had been made. Competence. Super cool, right? So it's about relatedness, connection with the community, and competence. Just how much progress had been made. And they have a great quote from somebody who participated in this group. When I'm on my own, I feel like my life doesn't make sense. But when I'm in the creative group, I feel like I still got hope that I can do something better in the future. Really lovely. So creative writing group was, it seems, pretty valuable to people there. Rampley and colleagues in 2019, Experience of Creative Writing as a Serious Leisure Occupation. What a title. An interpretative phenomenological analysis. In the Journal of Occupational Science, cool study. They basically cite a couple of cautions, which is interesting. They talk about Patterson's cautionary observation that writing poetry or prose doesn't necessarily offer comfortable or straightforward ways of improving mental health. So we've got to be a little bit cautious here too. Look after yourselves out there, everyone. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just sort of monitor my own emotional well-being as I'm doing this kind of stuff, and just kind of make sure that if I'm not feeling okay for whatever reason, I'll reach out for support. And I'm going to, I don't know what I'm going to do actually. Well, we'll find out. Let's keep looking through. So the authors found that that performing poetry in front of an audience altered the experience from a purely solitary endeavor to an occupation within a supportive community that could affirm self-worth, competence, and relatedness once again. So while autonomy, here is fairly easy to reach, right? You just write about what you find interesting. You write about what you want to write about, right? But in terms of converting it from a solitary experience, that, Patterson says, be a bit careful about doing this very much on your own, because it can cause some negative influences, I guess, if you're re-experiencing some difficult things. So really very much, be very cautious, very gentle with yourself, stay safe in the topics that you write about, stay safe in terms of what you're doing, and also stay connected. So I think the recommendation here from Rampley and colleagues is that, get into a writing group, because creative writing groups are about community, and they're about competence in a way that, because you're getting feedback on your work in a way that a solitary experience can't do. So, SDT, self-determination theory, autonomy, relatedness, and competence kind of got to be part of a group. And it's not surprising that that's the recommendation, right, given what we've talked about so far. And then Williams and colleagues in 2019, identification with arts-based groups improves mental well-being in adults with chronic mental health conditions. Journal of Applied Social Psychology, big journal. Really interesting piece of work. They basically found that arts participation generally is good for you, but it's doing it in a group provides greater psychological benefits than doing it alone, essentially. And that's kind of supported by research that they cite, Stewart and Lonsdale, Weinberg and Joseph, all within the last 5 years. Fascinating. Again, not surprising in terms of self-determination theory. These guys also reference, what I have never heard before, this idea called the social cure approach. Now, this obviously is not a real cure, but what they're suggesting is that participation in these kinds of groups can play an important role in improving mental health in people who experience long-term mental health conditions. And it's not contact with social groups that does the trick under this theory, but it's the sense of identification with the group that affects individuals' behavior, beliefs, and attitudes. They say this is because it is through social identification that people internalize the norms and values of the group membership. So it's really interesting. What they're saying is that it's not just about attending a creative group like this, like a creative writing group. It's about identification with that group. So you have to kind of get in there, engage with the group, participate in all the group activities, and feel a sense of identification with the group and do the things, the closer you feel, the more connected to the group you feel, the more identification you feel, the stronger the influence is. In fact, what they found is that for people who don't identify strongly with the group that they're participating in, they don't experience any benefit to their mental health, at least in this study, which is really interesting. Now, these guys also cite Cruey's study in 2013, which was a longitudinal study of over 5,000 older adults in the UK, and found people with a diagnosis of depression who reported not belonging to any groups, but who joined one group as a consequence of the study, reduced their risk of relapsing into another depressive episode over the next 6 years by 24%. And if they joined 3 groups, their risk of relapse reduced by 63%. So these guys are kind of saying, listen, social groups are important. Really, I mean, that's no surprise to us now, right? So social groups is really important. Identification with groups can be really important. And it's facilitated by joining social groups that resonate with your personal identities. If you feel like creative writing is something that you would like to do, if it's connected to something meaningful for you, or you think it could be, then maybe a creative writing group is a good call. Connection with groups in the community and doing the things that are important to you. Again, like biasing cognition and biasing what we do towards meaning and towards connection. This could be a really good opportunity to do those things. So emphasizing commonality and familiarity between group members and providing opportunities for friendly and empowering social interactions are key. So, creative writing groups where you get to write, you get to share your stuff with other people, get positive reinforcement from each other, and bond as a group. Gosh, I'm actually being convinced by this. I was like, as soon as I started this, I was like, there's no way I'm joining a creative writing group. Are you kidding me? But, oh gosh, maybe I am. Maybe I am going to do this. All right. I've kind of got to, haven't I? I'm going to have to go and look for a creative writing group. What else am I going to do? So Pearce, 2017, Participants' Perspectives on the Social Bonding and Wellbeing Effects of Creative Arts Adult Education Classes. Another really kick-ass study in 2017 from Arts and Health, an International Journal for Research, Policy and Practice. Wonderful stuff. This was a good, I believe, a quote. I'm aware of a strong group energy that's developed during the course, and from the music-related stories people have brought and the personal nature of some of them, that deep connections have been made, and that can only enhance people's sense of safety and belonging. People have taken risks in singing solo. Oh yeah, I remember this one. Pearce's is about obviously about singing. This is the other thing, right? Peripherally, as I was looking at the creative writing stuff, I found there was a bunch of research about singing and being parts of choirs, which either formed a lot of the control groups that people were assessing writing against, or that were the subject of their own studies. So singing groups do have strong benefits. Why? Because competence, relatedness, autonomy, it's perfect, right? Another really interesting group. People have taken risks in singing solo, bringing songs that have important significance to them and songs they have written themselves. This indicates a growing confidence in their innate musicality and the joy that brings in coming together in trust with others. God, it sounds amazing, doesn't it? So these creative classes, whether it be pottery, whether it be singing, whether it be writing. The research focuses on singing and writing, but it seems like any that bring you together with other people in a creative endeavor, offering opportunity for competence, opportunity for autonomy, opportunity for relatedness are good stuff. Alperone. We're nearly getting to the end of these now. Alperone and colleagues, 2015, The Words to Tell Their Own Pain. What a fantastic title for a study. Oh, I love it. Linguistic markers of cognitive reappraisal in mediating benefits of expressive writing. So what these guys are suggesting in their work is that writing about experiences that have been very challenging is associated with improvement in health and psychological well-being, where that invites a bit of cognitive reappraisal. So what they're saying is that we can bind some of the cognitive reappraisal stuff that we've already talked about with creative writing in a way that kind of allows us to explore difficult experiences like the MS through fantasy, through I don't know what it could be for me in my own context. I mean, I would love to write about either poetry or writing about a fantasy story that has some kind of connection to the MS, whether I perceive the MS as a creature chasing, stalking our protagonist, and what that might be, where we sort of wind up reframing or changing the experience of the creature. Who knows where that might wind up, but that could be about cognitive reappraisal, shifting how I think about the creature that otherwise I perceive to be stalking me. So there might be some real opportunity here. Fantastic stuff. So they got 70 undergraduates randomly divided into experimental control groups, writing about painful past events or a neutral topic. Now, their longitudinal design, they used measures of anxiety, longitudinal, so they did it over time to assess the impact over a long period of time, 4 months after the end of the creative writing sessions. And they found that expressive writing had a positive effect on anxiety, even after a 4-month-long follow-up period. So, and they said that, the reason why they think that this is happening is because cognitive reappraisal is key here. Writing about things and changing how we think about them is kind of what good creative writing is about. All good creative writing is about change, fundamentally. So it's cool. I mean, this stuff is I'm no writer. I'm going to need to go to a creative writing group to learn how to do good creative writing, but it might be a sort of way to explore the MS in a new way with other people in a safe space. And developing my writing skill and becoming cool at something. That sounds amazing. So the last one I wanted to talk about is Lowe's work in 2006, health-related effects of creative and expressive writing. Now, they found that standard writing tasks have good range of psychological and behavioral benefits. They say that there are improvements in health and well-being, enhanced levels of host defenses, in immune system functioning. Listen, I've heard this a few times now in the research that creative writing benefits the immune system. I don't really want my immune system to feel that benefited, so we're just going to put that to one side as an outcome. I don't know why immune system functioning is... actually, maybe I do. There's a whole field of psychology called psychoneuroimmunology, which connects immune system functioning to mental health and mood and positive affect or negative affect. It's a whole raft of stuff. I don't know. I think we just have to put that to one side. I can't say that I don't want to be a part of a creative writing group because I don't want my immune system to benefit. That sounds bananas. I think we just have to kind of go ahead. My doc is like, the immune system is incredibly complicated and nobody really fully understands it. And this is a good example. Creative writing benefits your immune system. Bananas. Other notable findings include reduced severity of symptoms in arthritis and asthma sufferers. That's completely wild. But again, writing disclosure may also have negative effects on people who experience post-traumatic stress disorder. So we've seen this a few times, right? It seems that the theme of this is as follows. Creative writing is a really cool thing to be doing, right? Creative writing has like a good chunk of benefits. in particular where it invites a bit of cognitive reframing. It seems that cognitive reframing is creative writing is a really good opportunity for cognitive reframing to explore something we're finding challenging or difficult. But also we have to be quite careful, because creative writing is not, as they say, not necessarily a smooth or direct way to mental health. And if you're experiencing mental health problems, seek out mental health support from good, sound sources. This is not a good way to manage mental health difficulties. However, because it features autonomy, competence, and relatedness, particularly where it is about a creative writing group coming together, it might offer the opportunity for motivation and flourishing, an opportunity to feel motivated to connect to other people around something that we all find mutually beneficial and mutually exciting and interesting, an opportunity for autonomy, where we choose what we write about and when we write and how we write, competence, where we get positive reinforcement from each other, where we get to perform our work to one another, and relatedness, where, we're a little brave and performing in front of each other gives us an opportunity to do some shared risk-taking, and we come together and bind together as a unit, as a group, and feel connected to one another, and identification with the group. If we feel a strong sense of identification with the group, then maybe, just maybe, it will help us to feel a bit better about ourselves, a little bit happier in the world, because, of course, as we found in so many different ways, connection to other people is one of the fundamental things that will help us to feel good. So I'm going to do a little bit of something to get us started. I'm going to write a poem, basically, and I'm going to perform it to you, because what better way to get us started? I'll also look for a creative writing group. I promise. I will go and have a look and see if I can find a local creative writing group I can join. We'll do our best. I need to be doing more of this stuff, and if you're all thinking, oh God, that sounds like a lot of work, or you're just feeling nervous about it, just know that you're not alone in those nerves. For sure, I get a bit nervous about this too. But this is a seed we got to plant, then I'm going to plant it. Let's do a bit of poetry first, though. Oh gosh, I'm going to write a poem and perform it in a podcast. Okay, I'm going to go write, and I'm going to go write. It's going to take me a bit of time. I will continue the recording as soon as I have finished. From your perspective, I'll be right back. Okay. All right, I did it. I wrote a poem. For you. It's about MS. Classically. It's called Horizon. No storm, no rocks, no surging seas, but deep within the wood, disease spreads through disconnected trees, scarring root and branch and leaf. Crashing forth against the tide, her bough rocks from side to side, a once supple form ossified, defiant, stood in dark relief. Though her optimism fails, winds capture billowing sails, and pressing onward she inhales, growing against disbelief. Cutting through the water's surge, she twists against its mournful dirge, and from beneath the waves emerge a ship heralding heart motif. The waves in passage peak and fall, and her course runs right through the squall, but now she stands robust stone wall, and welcomes water like a reef. She surges onward through the storm, pushing oceans to conform to fold around now crafted form of love and root and branch and leaf. Thanks so very much for joining me. This is Sciencing the Shit Out of MS. We solve one problem, we solve the next problem, we solve the next, and if we solve enough problems, we get to thrive in the context of this disease. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.